Okay, thank you. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bharira Jakacharya Astotar Shata Shri Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. His co-founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bharira Jakacharya Astotar Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Kaur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanata Bhata Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhata Das Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sekar Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Govana Shamakun Radhakul Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Dev Ki Jai. Tulsi Dev Ki Jai. Anantakara Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Rathraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Iskar Varma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gora Pranamanande. Haribo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru, Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tito Jayam Yuridayat Nasta Presho Tareshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, and unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right, good morning, everybody, this vast crowd. Today is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. 2025. I'm making you cringe. Yeah. So today we're reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 28. Puranjana becomes a woman in his next birth, and we'll be reading verse 19. Okay. Namayana Sute Bhunte Nasnate Snati Matpara Mai Rushte Susantrasta Partsite Yata Vagbayat Namayana Sute Bhunte Nasnate Snati Matpara Mai Rushte Susantrasta Partsite Yata Vagbayat Namayana Sute Bhunte Nasnate Partsite Yata Vagbayat. Okay, please chant. Namayana Sute Bhunte Nasate Nati Para Mayrushte Susantrasta Partsite Yata Vagbayat Namayana Sute Bhukte Nasnate Snati Matpara Mayrushte Susantrasta Partsite Yata Vagbayat. All right, word for word. Na, never. Mai, when I, excuse me. Anashite, had not eaten. Bhukte, she would eat. Na, never. Asnate, had not taken bath. Snati, she would take her bath. Matpara, always devoted to me. My, when I, Rushte, was angry. Susantrasta, very much frightened. Partsite, when I chastised. Yatavak, fully control the words. Bayat, out of fear. Okay, translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. King Paranjana then began to think of his past dealings with his wife. He recalled that his wife would not take her dinner until she had finished his, and that she would not take her bath until he had finished his, and that she was also very much attached to him, so much so that if he would sometimes become angry and chastise her, she would simply remain silent and tolerate his misbehavior. Please repeat. King Paranjana then began to think of his past dealings with his wife. He recalled that his wife would not take her dinner until he had finished his, that she would not take her bath until he had finished his, and that she was always very much attached to him. So much so that if he would sometimes become angry and chastise her, she would simply remain silent and tolerate his misbehavior. Purport. A wife is always supposed to be submissive to her husband. Submission, mild behavior, and subservience are qualities in a wife which make a husband very thoughtful of her. For family life, it is very good for a husband to be attached to his wife, but it is not very good for spiritual advancement. Thus, Krishna consciousness must be established in every home. If a husband and wife are very much attached to one another in Krishna consciousness, they will both benefit because Krishna is the center of their existence. Otherwise, if the husband is too much attached to his wife, he becomes a woman in his next life. The woman, being overly attached to her husband, becomes a man in her next life. Of course, it is an advantage for a woman to become a man, but it is not at all advantageous for the man to become a woman. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapatandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaisnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Dapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishubhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Upstage even at the desk Charni Prabhupada Malabai Sneak the Silver Nadi Kyan Jatu Pavana Basket Manam Yarabuta Chitare Nature Shishina Maha. Right, Jai. Okay, so in this verse today, we can see that King Paranjana, he's remembering his wife very fondly. And Srila Prabhupada is talking about how a wife should be submissive to her husband. And actually, the husband and the wife should actually work together and submit to one another. And also to Krishna. They should also submit to one another and also to Krishna. So it's not that a woman should just like submit to live under any condition with her husband, right? Cases of abuse, which are so prevalent in our society right now. These are very serious things that can drastically alter a person, not only the person being abused's life, but their children as well, their other family members. I've personally seen and experienced this, and I've seen so many others. And also ISKCON as an organization, they actually do not condone this in any way. And sometimes people kind of get confused about this, and they think, oh no, a woman is supposed to be submissive to her husband under any condition. And I've heard devotees say that, but that is not the case, even officially by ISKCON standards. There was a resolution made, it looks like in January of 2019, which is pretty late, I think, but and then the resolution from the GBC resolution says domestic abuse is illegal, indefensible, and never acceptable within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And any interpretation of Vaishnava religious or social teachings that condones, endorses, or justifies domestic abuse is rejected by the North American Governing Body Commission. So I just wanted to put that out there so everybody knows and understands. And so another reason also is if your husband is preventing you from serving Krishna, that can also be another reason to not necessarily submit. And we can see this in the example of the great devotee Mirabai, right? Mirabai, her husband wanted her to cook meat, serve him meat, and do things that she just was not comfortable with, being a devotee of Krishna. And so she ended up running away and completely devoting herself to Krishna. And so the important thing, though, is to use your intelligence in this matter, because, just because if you've already married someone who's not a devotee, just because they're not a devotee doesn't necessarily mean, oh, yes, you need to leave them, right? Because your association can actually help bring them closer to Krishna. So you really want to think about this carefully. Take the advice of your spiritual master and the other Vaishnavas, and in that way you can sort of realize what would be appropriate to submit to and what would not be appropriate. And so Radhanath Swami, he said, every man wants his wife to be like Sita, but they don't want to be like Lord Ram, right? And I can see some heads shaking. And so what this reminds us of is that, yes, the woman should submit to her husband, but the husband should also do his part, and that is to take care of and also submit to his wife. Our roles are different, but it's in a healthy relationship, there's kind of this mutual submission to each other and to Krishna. So family life is generally not very good for spiritual advancement, because now, you have so many other distractions, right? So now not only do you have your own body and bodily needs, but now you also have to worry about bodily needs of your wife or husband, your children, your little dog or cat, your house plants, whatever have you, and this can be very distracting to spiritual life, right? And to being able to draw closer to Krishna, because you're spending so much time preoccupied of, oh my gosh, you got to earn money so the kids can get braces and get, in a good college or whatever it is, or we need, the bills are due and we don't have enough money. That takes up so much bandwidth when you're trying to make ends meet, and you can't quite do it. You're kind of preoccupied with that all the time. Then you become like just money conscious, right? Instead of Krishna conscious. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 5th canto, let's see here. The 5th canto, it says, one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. And so later in a purport from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada says, he repeats that one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a relative, a father or mother, a worshipable demigod, nor should a person become a husband. Everyone naturally gets a father and mother at the time of birth, but the real father and mother are those who can release their offspring from the clutches of imminent death. This is possibly only for parents advanced in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, any parents who cannot enlighten their offspring in Krishna consciousness cannot be accepted as real father and mother. The following verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu confirms the uselessness of serving ordinary parents. One should perform only those activities, either worldly or prescribed by Vedic rules, and regulations, which are favorable for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So we can see there, we want to accept what's favorable. And I see this a lot. This is like kind of like you can take away one thing from any of my classes, it's this one. You want to accept what's favorable for your Krishna consciousness and reject what's unfavorable. And so that extends to family life too. And it says, unless, this is from our purport in the third canto, unless one can train a child for liberation in that life, there's no need to marry or produce children. If human society produces children like cats and dogs for the disturbance of social order, then the world becomes hellish, as it has in this age of Kali. In this age, neither parents nor their children are trained. Both are animalistic and simply eat, sleep, mate, defend, and gratify their senses. This disorder in social life cannot bring peace to human society. So we can see this. We have so many social problems right now, and it's mainly due to people not having the proper consciousness when they're entering into relationships, and they're not even entering into marriage anymore. They're just having children, and the children are more. It's just an afterthought. It's not planned, for so many people, and so those children are, they're not able to help their children become released from the bonds of material nature, and so it's just causing so many social problems. However, you can, if you keep Krishna in the center of your relationship, then you can lift each other up. And so this is why it's so important when you're choosing a spouse to choose a proper spouse, right? Because when you meet someone and you have that attraction, that attraction, it confuses us and it doesn't make us think right. There's that saying, love is blind, right? But it really should be like lust is blind, right? Because you're feeling lusty, and so you're like, oh, I really like this guy or I really like this girl. And you tend to overlook some shortcomings, sometimes very major shortcomings. Big waving red flags, and people will just walk right past them because, oh no, I love them. I love them. They're so wonderful. And and then they end up, getting married, or so nowadays not even getting married and entering into a physical relationship and producing children. And then next thing you know, all those waving red flags, you can no longer ignore them. And now you're in a serious situation, right? And you're completely entangled in this situation. So it's very important to choose wisely. And that's why in the past, and still currently, but not as much, there was arranged marriages, right? Because people that were not in that kind of false state of that intoxicated state of lust were able to objectively look at the compatibility of certain partners and try to account for what would make a good relationship. And so in college, when I was in college, I remember writing a paper about this that was in favor of arranged marriage, and like everybody looked at me like I was insane. But I mean, really, with the success rate of marriages nowadays, I mean, I think that's insane. Of course, you want to have affinity for the person you're marrying, but it's very helpful to have others that don't have that that lusty desire for this other person to look at this and see, oh, is this going to be a good match? Are they compatible? Do they want the same things out of life? Do they have the same kind of temperament? Are their family values similar? These are the kind of things. Are their ideas about money similar? These are things that you need to consider. And for devotees, it's most important to consider, is this person going to help you in your Krishna consciousness? Or are they going to make it harder for you? So generally, a man's supposed to take sannyas once he hits a certain age and kind of leave family life. However, if the marriage is Krishna-centered and you are, helping each other, raising each other up, this isn't necessary. We look at, our examples of Divya Mataji and Damodar Prabhu, right? They're always reading together. They're always telling me about what they were reading the night before. They're always coming and doing service. Damodar is always working with Tulsi. Divya Mataji, she's sewing, fixing clothes for the deities and so on, baking cookies. And they're coming to the programs. And so in this way, they're actually helping each other. And so this isn't we talk kind of badly about family life a lot. But that's kind of the more common idea of family life, right? Which is what 99% of the world's doing. But devotee family life, if you're doing it properly, can be really helpful for your Krishna consciousness. And so, let's see here. Yeah, and so in the I forget what this one's for. I usually write it down. I didn't. But Srila Prabhupada says, actually, a woman is supposed to be the energy of the man. Historically, in the background of every great man, there's either a mother or wife. One's household life is very successful if he has both a good wife and mother. In such case, everything about household affairs and all the paraphernalia in the house becomes very pleasing. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a good mother and a pleasing wife, and he was very happy at home. Nonetheless, for the benefit of the whole human race, he took sannyas and left both his mother and his wife. In other words, it is essential that one have both a good mother and wife in order to become perfectly happy at home. Otherwise, home life has no meaning. Unless one is religiously guided by intelligence and renders devotional service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his home can never become very pleasing to a saintly person. In other words, if a man has a good mother or a good wife, there is no need of his taking sannyas. That is, unless it is absolutely necessary, as it was for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, yeah, we can see it's not necessary to do that if you have a good wife at home or a good husband. I mean, women can't take sannyas, but there's no need to break up that family unit if that's the case. And so this preoccupation with the spouse, Srila Prabhupada mentions how it can kind of cause basically switching between the genders lifetime after lifetime, right? Because at the time of death, we know in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, right, whatever state of being one remembers, when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. And so, most people, when they die, they're preoccupied with their family, right? Thinking, oh, they're going to be okay. Is my wife going to have enough money to pay the mortgage? Are the kids going to have college funds? Or the wife is thinking of her husband, oh no, who's going to cook him dinner? Who's going to make him go to the doctor, right? These kinds of things. These are the things that people are thinking of at the time of death, and they end up taking on the body of a woman or a man, whatever their opposite is, because they're preoccupied with that. But really, the husband and wife should submit to each other out of love. So there's this cute little, I don't know if it was a skit or a comic or what I saw, and it was about this old married couple, and they had been married for a long, long time, and they were arguing about something, and they were very, very mad at each other. They didn't want to talk to each other but they loved each other. It was very apparent. And it started raining, and so the husband, he opens the umbrella and he holds it over his wife, but he's still mad and not talking to her, right? And it's so cute. And that's because he's submitting to her because he loves her, right? Even though he's mad at her at that moment, he still loves her. And so he's making sure she's protected from the rain. And so in that way, the husband and wife should submit to each other out of love. And even though it's often talked about how the wife needs to submit, the husband also needs to submit to the wife. And we could see an example of this in the story of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, right? So Kardama Muni was a great sage, and Devahuti was very nicely serving her husband. She was constantly serving him. And as a great sage, he wasn't like providing some nice place for her to live or anything. And so she's, making sure he's taken care of every day, to the point where she ended up losing weight. She was like looking all scraggly because she wasn't really taking care of herself so much. She was taking care of her husband so nicely. And so one day he noticed this, and the only thing she ever asked him for was she wanted children, right? And so he noticed one day how thin she had become and how kind of scraggly she looked, and out of love for her, he used his yogic powers to make her this beautiful sky palace, so they could fly around for a very long time all throughout the universe, and he was able to give her those children that she wanted, right? And so in that way, he submitted to her, right? Because that's what she wanted. It wasn't like something necessarily that he wanted. He was perfectly satisfied, doing his meditation. But he was able to submit to her out of love, right? And give her the children that she wanted. And one of whom ended up being the Lord himself. So, pretty good. And so submission out of love is very powerful. That love and that submission can actually kind of control the husband or the wife, right? And a really basic example would be like the wife, she'll be cooking food that maybe she doesn't like so much, but she knows her husband likes it, right? So she's going to make it for him. And just because she loves him, she wants him to be happy. She's wants to see him enjoy that. And similarly, the husband, maybe the wife isn't so good at cooking, or maybe she's cooking stuff he doesn't like it, but still he'll eat it and he'll say, "Oh, it's good," even though maybe it wasn't so good, right? I've seen this not in a husband-wife relationship, but with my father when I was growing up. I moved in with my father when I was a teenager, and he was kind of your typical bachelor. He didn't really eat very well, and so I thought I'd better, cook for him, or else he's just going to eat TV dinners and things. And so I didn't know how to cook, but I was learning, and I was not very good at it at all. But my dad ate every terrible thing I made and told me how good it was, right? He was just saying, "Oh, it's so delicious." When I was eating it myself, I could tell it was not delicious. And that was out of love, right? And so in the same way, a husband will do that for his wife. And that's submitting out of love, right? And so just like this, Krishna can also be controlled by love and submission, right? And we see so many stories of where Radha is able to kind of get him to do certain things because he loves her, right? And one of my favorite stories that I heard is a story that Indrayuma Swami told in one of his beautiful classes, and it always stuck with me, and I always thought it was so cute. And this is so I'm going to tell that story. Although I encourage you to watch that video I can tell you which one it is, because he certainly tells it with much more detail than I'm going to be able to. So one day there's Radha and Krishna and the gopis. They're out in the forest, and they're just kind of hanging out and playing and having a nice time. And Radha noticed there's this kind of square, like empty square area in the forest, and she asked Krishna, hey, what is that? What is that square over there? And he said, that's our wrestling arena where me and the cowherd boys, we get together, we wrestle, we show our prowess, and just have a good time. And so Radha asks him, oh, she said, well, when you have these wrestling matches, do you win? And Krishna, he's kind of like, what? What do you mean? Do I win? He's like, well, yes, of course, yes, I win. I'm a very good wrestler, And Radha says, oh, well, my brother tells me that when you guys wrestle, that he wins. And Krishna's just like, he's just kind of flabbergasted a little bit about that. And so then the gopis start asking Krishna, we want to see you in your wrestling outfit. Can we see you in your wrestling outfit? We would really like to see that. And Krishna's saying, that's impossible. I only wear my wrestling outfit when I'm going to wrestle. I'm not going to I'm not a model. I'm not some model just to model these outfits for you, right? And so Lalita says, well, what if someone challenges you? What if someone challenges you to a wrestling match? And Krishna says, well, yeah, okay, yeah, then I would wear my wrestling outfit. And so Lalita says, well, I challenge you. I challenge you to a wrestling match. We all challenge you to a wrestling match. And Krishna says, what? How can I fight a bunch of girls? How can I fight a delicate princess like Radha, right? And so then one gopi, kind of egging the other girls on, says, oh, well, how can you turn down a challenge, right? And so Krishna's like, okay, all right, you're right. I can't turn down a challenge. All right. Be careful what you ask for. So he dresses in his best, most colorful wrestling outfit. And the gopis, they also change into, like, it says that they dressed in the Kshatriya style. So I don't know exactly what that is, but I have some kind of vague image in my mind of what it might be. But they also said they put their hair in little top knots on top of their heads. So in my mind, I'm thinking of, how like sumo wrestlers, they put their hair in top knots. It's like what I'm imagining.
They tie the bottom so it's the legs are free.
Yeah, I kind of like Dodi style, maybe. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's what I imagined in my head. So I'm probably a little shorter too, I would guess, maybe. But so they're not like tripping over it. All right. So they're all dressed up in their cute little outfits or fierce outfits, whatever. I'm sorry, they're not cute. They're wrestling. This is a serious thing. And so Krishna starts telling them the rules, and he's telling them that, when he wrestles with the cowherd boy, they do things to inflict great pain by putting knees to the chest and pulling hair and punching the face and strangleholds. And the girls are kind of getting a little freaked out, and they're saying, they're all murmuring, and they're like looking scared at each other, and they're saying to Lalita, what did you get us into? And so Krishna sees this, and he sees the girls getting all kind of worried. And he says, don't worry, girls, don't worry. We'll do pastime wrestling, which he then goes on to explain is basically just wrestling for fun, with not not so much, pain and force inflicted on each other. He said, but it's only fair if you fight me all together, since you're all, girls. It's only fair if you fight me all together. Bless you. And so then they all start fighting, right? And Krishna's, easily, taking care of all the gopis. But Radha, she's, consistently is shown to be his most formidable opponent, right? And so eventually what he ends up doing is he expands himself so that there's one of him for each gopi, and he grabs them behind, and they start yelling, "That's not fair, you can't grab us from behind, that's not fair." And so he manages to take them down, and finally it's just him and Radha. And so all the gopis are surrounding, and they're cheering, "Radhe, Radhe," and they're wrestling, they're fighting, and finally Radha manages to get him to the ground, and is going to pin him down, and he taps out. He taps out, right? And so she wins. And so all the gopis are cheering. And so what does this story show us? But that Krishna, who is God himself, right? He could certainly, if he wanted, do any number of things in order to win this fight, right? But Radha won because of her love and her devotion to him, right? And he submitted to her in that situation because of that love and devotion. And that's because Krishna is controlled by this love and devotion. And so in this way, our love and devotion that we can give to Krishna can help, that can bring Krishna under our control, right? Not in the way that we're, telling him to do so many things, but in the way that we can be part of his life, right? And he'll be part of our lives. And so, and so in closing, I guess it's a little earlier than I wanted it to be, but in closing, I just wanted to take this idea of a wife submitting to her husband, and just show how really it's our submission to Krishna. The wife should submit to her husband, but also the husband should submit to the wife, and they should both submit to Krishna, right? And we should all, if you don't have a husband or wife, then you should also submit to Krishna, because really he's the only Purusha, right? He's the only male, right? He's the enjoyer and we're the enjoyed. So we need to submit to him. And so in that way, I just want to open the floor and see if anybody can maybe give an example of a time that you yourself were controlled by love or had seen it.
Controlled by love?
Yeah, by love. Yeah, anybody? Yeah. All right, well.
Controlled by lust, but not by love.
Yeah. Well, what about what you're doing every day, right? Every day? Like every day, Mother Tsunami, she gets up and she does so much service for Krishna, right? I mean, if she didn't love Krishna, would she do those things? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think so, though. All right, is there any comments,
Yeah,
questions?
I just want to know what you're reading.
That's a story that Indra Swami told in one of his classes.
Did he give the source?
No, I don't remember if he gave a source or not. Yeah, no.
He's getting everything from those.
Corresponding this. It goes on.
Yeah. And then I was trying to find, I couldn't find the video because it's a pretty old one. I couldn't find the video for a long time. I was like Googling. I finally did find it. But then I found like another version. Kind of, it seems like the same story, but some of the details are a little different. But it was just somebody was recounting it on a Facebook page. And so I don't know exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
So how did you, I'm just curious how you navigated this apparently male chauvinist purport.
Yes, well, the whole class was about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, it is an advantage for a woman to become a man, but it is not at all advantageous for the man to become a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa, that's fighting words for feminists, right?
Yeah.
Or even just people trying to become devotees.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you handle that?
I mean, I didn't address specifically that sentence.
Yeah,
because I
that's the
think-
one.
Glazed over it.
Yeah, I think, there's advantages to be had in both in the male and female body. I don't want to sit here and disagree with our previous acharyas. So, I think it's all about submission to Krishna, and it's not about worrying so much about what body you're in, right? Because there's so many things that women are able to do that better than men, and there's so many things that men are able to do better than women, and both are needed, right?
Mhm.
And so to say that it's a great disadvantage to be a woman. I mean, if you look at the state of the world, it is. Okay.
And because the men all.
That's just the way it is, right? That's the facts of the world that we live in.
Yeah. Right.
But is that something that should preoccupy our minds? No, because there's so many ways that you can serve Krishna. Krishna loves variety, and there's so many things that women can do that are better and handle things better than men can. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but sometimes, like when I go to other temples that are run by men, it's very apparent that not as much care is taken to make sure that things look nice and welcoming and inviting, right? And that's because generally, like, women are better than that. We see at that, doing that, right? We see like women, and I think Kirtan just said this in his class too, right? You go to like a bachelor pad and there's like a mattress on the floor and a bottle of mustard in the fridge, right?
Mhm.
But then when he gets a wife or a girlfriend, then suddenly you get, nicely decorated place, good food in the fridge. And that's because these are just things that are more, these are just things that women are better at than men. Now, that's not always the case. I mean, certainly there's always outliers. But yeah, so I think it's not something we should be so preoccupied with. But yeah, I mean, that's
One reason we can't really deal with it so much is because we haven't really created a Devi Varnashram culture to show it.
Mhm.
I've been hearing, I'm on my third viewing of it. My godbrother Raninath Basu in Gainesville, he interviewed Abhiram Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's nurse in his last days, and Prabhupada talked to him a lot about the second half of his mission, which he hadn't had time to do. And it's all about creating a whole culture. And Abhiram is actually, now he's trying to do something, and he's my age. He's been doing a lot in India where there's still remnants of Vedic culture. And it's all about, he was saying, it's all about creating an environment to protect womanhood.
Mhm.
So she can actually be the Guru Ma to raise boys and girls in a very nurturing environment. But because we live in this world where all the gender roles are upside down and backwards and topsy-turvy, and the values are sense gratification, we don't understand how Krishna created us with different roles. And once you realize that it's all about everybody cooperating, like you say, the husband serves the wife serves the husband, and it just neutralizes the whole, war, what do they call it, the war of the sexes?
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this is it was very inspiring just to hear Abhiram talk like this, because you're not only doing things like, growing and trying to create, what he calls a culture of prosperity for families. But he's actually philosophically trying to help people understand what life is, what the purpose of life is, what our roles are in life. But we haven't shown that really so much in ISKCON. But to take it right down to here, yeah, I've never also been in a temple where the temple president puts signs on the door saying, "We're so happy to see you." Or like when I come back from India, "We're so happy you've come back." Yes, that's the woman's touch.
Yeah, that's sweet. That makes you feel cared for.
Yeah, and Abhiram he was quoting a very famous saying, "The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world."
Yeah.
The first guru is the mother.
Right.
And when you have Gurukula, real Gurukula, the husband is the guru, but the wife is the one that's actually raising the kids. Mm-hmm. Taking the kids in and making sure that everybody's secure materially and emotionally and spiritually. So, yeah, the lady plays a vital role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mother's Done. Just
reiterate a little bit what Sureshwar says in Kali Yuga. And even today, when Dhiro read that pastime of Prabhupada, he was, some man came, he wanted to take sannyas. Prabhupada dismissed him and was saying, your wife is so talented, she's a great musician. And so, there are a few isolated things throughout Prabhupada's books, but when you look at how Prabhupada treated the devotees, the other overwhelmingly many statements he made, about the, devotees, the men and women being equal, and his sannyasi disciples can do more than his sannyasi god brothers. There's so many things. So if someone points to one or two things in the purport, there's so many things that back up that Prabhupada said to encourage the ladies. And I mean, personally, I am so glad I am not a man. Mm-hmm. I mean, for so many reasons, but there's so much pressure on them to, do this and that. And, I mean, actually we got it. It's like the secret. This is the real secret, is it's good. And, anyways, so many things can be talked about for this, but, as devotees, we're just happy to serve Krishna and serve each other. So.
Yeah, Josh. Do you have something, John?
So, Krishna created male and female for a reason, and I think both together is important. And obviously, there would be no children without male and female. And then having children, having a mother and a father is important too, obviously. And so I think it's really important for the children to respect both parents in a way that is, they brought them into the world, and without both of them, they wouldn't be in the world. And to really understand that beauty and the importance of motherhood and fatherhood, and really to understand that balance and that alignment, instead of getting in competitiveness of male and female, but actually just seeing it as a whole. And if you really see it as a whole, and Krishna's creation, then as a devotee, we would really respect both male and female in that way, mother and father, husband and wife, like that. But if we come into Krishna consciousness with our old, past, angers and fears from our parents that were maybe not devotees or just like that, then you kind of bring that in with you, which is sort of based in the ego area. So really coming into Krishna consciousness is we're supposed to be really releasing all that ego and just knowing that just doesn't really exist. It's an illusion. So if we can really understand that, then we wouldn't be bringing that in like, in a lot of cases, it happens a lot with the male, also with females too, where they want to become controlling and I'm right. And, you do it my way, instead of understanding that Krishna's in control and really getting what that means, that Krishna's in control. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's very good. I mean, really, it's just about, that balance, right? I mean, we're best working together, right? And if what we're trying to do is make as many people Krishna conscious as possible, then we need to have that balanced representation between men and women, because women, and I mean, that's like half the planet, right? So, a little more. So, so I think when we hear like this, a wife should submit to the husband, we have to remember that we need to in order to have proper social, roles, we need to submit to one another, right? It's not that, one person should be subjugated or another. It's just that there's differing roles. There's just things that women excel at that men not so much, and there's things that men excel at that women don't excel so much at. But the important thing is that together we kind of make this complete package, right? And also remember, there's always outliers. We don't want to forget that, right? There's some women are very good at things that maybe men are traditionally good at, and vice versa. And that's okay. There's room for variety, right? So the main thing is, to remember this is all our bodies are temporary, and what the overriding principle is this helping me get closer to Krishna? Is this allowing me to serve Krishna? And if we remember that, and we also take the opinions and advice of the other Vaishnavas and read the Shastras, then you're not going to go wrong. So, all right. Anything else? Yeah, Chris.
So I like the way you kind of described budding romance, where people think that they're, really in love with each other for higher reasons, but it's really just lust. But I'm also thinking, and I remember when I was young, and I sometimes, not always, I felt like I was attracted to somebody for spiritual reasons or karmic or whatever you would call it. And I think there's always a little bit of that in there if you're really attracted to somebody.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing happens in all relationships. Like I've had really important working relationships with people, but usually we don't really know how important it is, or even the real reason for why we're attracted to certain people or certain things.
Right.
We might find out later if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But it really is important to get other viewpoints, people around us, and see what they see when they look back at us.
Right.
And that's the purpose of the guru also.
Yeah.
The guru is supposed to be wiser than your average outside observer, but we need that objective viewpoint on all of our dealings in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I just remember like hearing just kind of vague advice about relationships, right? Where it's like, if you get into a relationship and all your friends don't like that person, there's a reason for it. You should take heed to that, right?
Yeah.
So it's because people, if you were blinded by that so-called love, right?
Yeah, lust is really powerful.
Yeah.
Especially at that age. It's super powerful.
Yeah.
You gotta have a way of accounting for that and keeping it out of your decision making.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, in there, Dr. Srimad Bhagavatam. That's it.